The road to Blackwood Pines hadn't been maintained in a generation. The minivan, packed with coolers and brand new camping gear, bottomed out twice on the forgotten track. Each jarring impact a punctuation mark in the argument that had been simmering since they left the city. There were two couples, Mark and Chloe, the instigators, desperate for an authentic experience away from the noise. And Ben and Sarah, the skeptics, who had only agreed under duress and the promise of stargazing. The forest swallowed them whole. The pines grew so thick they choked the afternoon light, creating a perpetual gloomy twilight. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting needles, was dead silent. No bird song, no insect hum, just a heavy, waiting silence. The first night was unnerving. As darkness fell, absolute and suffocating, the noises began. Not the familiar rustles of a healthy woodland, but something else. A low, guttural clicking that seemed to come from just beyond the ring of firelight. A sound like dry branches being dragged slowly over stone. Sarah sat rigid, her knuckles white around her mug of hot chocolate, while Mark laughed it off as raccoons. Ben, however, said nothing. He just stared into the impenetrable dark, his face a mask of unease. The second night, Ben vanished. Had gone to relieve himself 20 yards from the camp, a journey he'd made a dozen times before. This time, he didn't return. His name, called first with annoyance, then with concern, and finally with raw panic, was swallowed by the trees. Their flashlights cut feeble, trembling beams through the blackness, revealing nothing but endless trunks and their own terrified faces. Dawn brought no comfort, only a cold gray light that did little to dispel the dread. They had to find him. Armed with a hunting knife and a can of bear spray, they followed what they thought were his footsteps away from the camp. The forest seemed to close in behind them, the path disappearing as soon as they passed. It was Chloe who saw it first. She stopped dead, a choked gasp escaping her lips. 20 feet ahead, a pair of legs, clad in Ben's familiar jeans and hiking boots, hung from a low, thick branch of an ancient oak. They swung gently, grotesquely, as if recently placed. There was no torso, no head. Below them, arranged with a terrible deliberateness on a flat, moss-covered stone, was the rest of Ben. His upper body was laid out like a dissected specimen, the spine cleanly severed, the ribs splayed open. His face was frozen in a silent scream, his eyes wide with a terror they could now only imagine. The ground around the stone was dark and soaked, the coppery smell of blood thick enough to taste. Mark's bravado shattered. He vomited violently. Sarah screamed, a short, sharp sound that was cut off as her hands flew to her mouth. Then they ran. Logic, direction, everything was forgotten. They crashed through undergrowth, branches whipping at their faces, their only goal to put as much distance as possible between them and that unspeakable tableau. They hadn't run for more than a minute when Sarah's scream was cut short. It didn't echo. It was severed, replaced by a wet, crunching snap. Mark and Chloe skidded to a halt, turning back in time to see Sarah's body hit the forest floor. Her neck was bent at an impossible angle, but the true horror was the deep, parallel gouges that had been torn across her back, slicing through her jacket and deep into the flesh beneath, as if she'd been swiped by a giant clawed hand. There was no sign of what had done it. Panic became pure, unadulterated terror. Mark grabbed Chloe's hand and they ran again, their lungs burning. They could hear it now, a heavy, rhythmic thumping keeping pace with them just out of sight, accompanied by a low, rumbling breath that was more vibration than sound. They burst out of the tree line and into a small, rocky clearing. Their relief was instantaneous and catastrophic. It wasn't a way out. It was the edge of a cliff, a sheer drop into a mist-shrouded ravine hundreds of feet below. They were trapped. From the shadows of the pines it emerged. It was a nightmare of flesh and bone, standing on two powerful, backwards-jointed legs. Its hide was a patchwork of gnarled bark and slick gray skin. Its arms were long and ended in three-fingered hands, each finger tipped with a curved black claw, as long as a chef's knife. It had no discernible head, just a massive, bony protrusion from its shoulders with a single, vertical slit that pulsed with a foul, greenish light. It reeked of old blood and wet earth. It took a step forward, the claws on its feet scraping against the stone. Mark shoved Chloe behind him, brandishing the hunting knife with a trembling hand. It was a pathetic gesture. The creature moved with a speed that defied its size, One moment it was 10 feet away, the next it was upon him. A single casual swipe of its arms sent the knife clattering away. A second swipe opened Mark from his shoulder to his hip. He didn't even have time to scream before he collapsed, his life pouring out onto the rocky ground in a hot red tide. Chloe was alone. Backed against the precipice, she watched the thing turn its pulsing, slit-eyed gaze toward her. It took a slow, deliberate step, savoring her terror. The claws dripped with Mark's blood. She looked at the monster. Then she looked down at the misty abyss. The choice was not between life and death, but between two kinds of ending. One was bloody, painful, and sacrificial to some ancient forest god. The other was clean, final, and hers alone to choose. A strange calm settled over her. As the creature lunged, its claws outstretched, Chloe Rostova stepped backwards into the open air. The wind rushed past her ears, drowning out all sound. The fall was not a scream, but a silence. And as the jagged rocks rushed up to meet her, her final thought was not of the city, or her friends, or even her life, but of the terrible ancient silence of the pines, and the certainty that they were, once again, waiting.